Hi guys, Mitko here from DN Models. This video will be a post-built review of StuG III Alkett Late by MiniArt, kit number 35388. This is an Alkett production vehicle and the kit is one of the newest from MiniArt's StuG line. We'll touch some accuracy points, but for more certainty you should check Panzermeister 36's channel and ask him all the StuG questions that you have. He is the one to go to on that specific subject. Also, I would like to give him the credit for inspiring this specific video with his Reifield StuG III post-built review that gave me the additional incentive for building and reviewing this MiniArt kit. In advance, I also want to note that I am by no means a StuG expert. Thus, you might hear some information that is not confirmed and everything I say should be taken with a grain of salt. Nevertheless, StuG 3 and 4 as well as Jagdpanzer 4 are my favorite armor models, and I did put some effort in researching additionally while building this specific kit. Once again, Panzermeister 36 Reifield model StuG review video was a great help. Specifically in this particular case, since both models, Reifield model and MiniArt, depict late war Alkett production vehicles. Two factories built StuG III's, those were MiniArt and Alkett. Latter one is responsible for more vehicles produced and those were the better StuGs out there. Not that anything made in Germany was ever with poor quality anyhow, but it seems that Alkett were more specialized in what they were doing. Also, by more vehicles, I mean 3 times the amount that MiniArt produced, just so you know. First, and most important, I followed the instructions as much as my consciousness and experience let me, but I did some deviations. I couldn't help myself. We'll mention those in the video as we go through. In general, most of the plastic is very good, with only 3 cracked parts alongside the whole build and with almost no unpleasant surprises in terms of fit. Almost. Here and there is some flash. Most annoying for me was inside the gun muzzle and idler wheels. Gun, however, is something that I would exchange for metal one, thus I cannot say that it was a significant issue. Not for me at least. It is left here as it is on purpose. Unfortunately, some parts came with flash significantly larger than the detail itself, which is a little bit irritating considering how many small and intricate parts MiniArt embedded in their StuG and actually in any of their other kits. I have to add too that the instructions follow logic that is sometimes arguable. For example, Step 3 is building the headlight, and that is one of the parts I put on during the very last day of my build, not on the first page. The light itself came with a huge plastic blob which almost ruined it, but with thorough cleaning and a lot of doubts about buying an aftermarket or not, in the end was installed as it is out of the box. However, headlight was one of the parts that came with bad molding, in which, well, it wasn't flash, it was plastic blob and very thick too. I had to struggle with it for a while. Anyhow, same strategy goes for the photo etch chains in the rear section, which I never installed anyhow. They do look in scale, but somehow unrealistic, so in the end they stayed aside. Photo etch chains in general are rather flat, so in any possible case in which you can switch from them, I suggest that you do. Building the rear section, well, there came the first eyebrow moment, with the tow bar being detached from the surface of the vehicle and connected via bolts and spacers, which I haven't seen in real life StuG thus far. I researched my books and photos and then sent the question to MiniArt as well, but so far I got no answer about the tow bar. The instructions say you have to pin 2 holes in the hull, but then you get to attach the tow bar. The rods of the bolts are not supposed to be cut according to those same instructions, which leaves you with space in between and 2 useless hull pinholes. Beats me why MiniArt did this. Then, out of nowhere, in the instructions, the commander's cupola assembly pops out, but only a fraction of its whole building process. Why? Well, again, a mystery to me. Maybe MiniArt decided to squeeze it in there so no empty space will be left on the instruction sheet. I have no idea. Around that point is also where my first crack appeared. Luckily, it was on a piece of plastic that remains invisible. However, remembering old MiniArt plastic, that made me alert, and I stayed like that throughout the whole build further. Interior-wise, this is a kit without interior. However, there is something, and that is the gun mechanism inside. I guess they couldn't help themselves. Here I will offer my advice. If you want to make it movable and keep your hair from getting gray, you should remove the plastic rods and replace them with a metal one. Assembly of the parts is very tricky, featuring small elements that you can hardly glue and keep everything separate so to keep the moving elements. Everything is tight fit and liquid glue is out of the question here. Better way to approach this is to drill through the mechanism and install a new rod, plastic or metal, and metal it is if you ask me. With liquid Tamiya cement, you cannot glue that to the plastic, accidentally of course. Then, glue the bracket safely with that same Tamiya cement, after which finally you can put the metal rod in to keep the moving parts, well, movable. This might complicate things a bit, but it will guarantee freedom of movement and no accidental cement spill, which will solidify everything and not in a good way too. Also, MiniArt instructions say to add the gun mantlet after you glue the interior mechanism to the bottom of the hull, but I would advise against that too. First, attach the mantlet to the moving parts, slide it into the gun mantlet superstructure area, and then glue it to the bottom hull. This will guarantee movement and fit. Instructions again switch to commander's cupola, offering several options, but I picked the everything closed one because I don't like anything open neither on planes nor on tanks. The cupola itself features 1mm by 1mm photo etch elements, which, funny enough, according to the instructions, are meant for the advanced modeler. I hardly found anything in the whole build that was there for the novice, but I'm guessing that in Ukraine things are at a different level. No wonder Ruskies are having so much trouble in that ongoing war of theirs. The two half circles in the inside of the cupola doesn't fit at all. I don't know if mine were bad or the kit is engineered that way. However, that was the first bad fit that I encountered with the kit. They are rather thick and you cannot bend them easily. But it is a bad fit, and that's that. I assume photo etch could have been the solution here. There aren't many similar issues in general, but this was not the last bad fit I encountered. The meshes of the engine deck are the wrong option, just like in the rifle model kit that Panzermeister 36 calls the ultimate StuG. They should be plus-shaped, not like they are here, and this can be fixed only with additional aftermarket. There are a couple companies that makes those, but which one is best? Well, you should ask Panzermeister 36. Meshes are not a thing that will ruin the whole kit, but considering the overall accuracy, this is definitely a miss on behalf of the Ukrainian company. I trust they know better. In this area around the engine deck, we can find two more issues to address. First, and most important one, is the lack of the part that holds the retention hooks of the engine doors. This element of the kit is omitted completely, and I have no idea why MiniArt let that slide. Of course, you can either scratch build that or leave it off. I planned to scratch build mine, but I left it empty on purpose. Same reason I left the tow bar distance from the hull. I decided to better shoot this StuG as it is, rather than cover up mine or MiniArt's mistakes. The other issue, which is rather minor, is the assembly process. Instructions say you should attach the cleaning rods, which feature photo etch parts, after you put the rail holding the extra tracks on the back of the superstructure. This is exactly what I did too. However, best way to approach this is to install the gun cleaning rods first, photo etch, and then build on up. It is more logical and you can save some additional nerves. Minor things like that are all over the instructions. It is not as bad as Dragons, but it is not perfect. Also, it is not annoying for most of us, and definitely not an issue for an experienced modeler. But that limits even more of the MiniArt's audience, since the kit is generally a lot more complex than the most competitors out there. This only adds spices to the soup until it gets uneatable. For example, the sloped armor in front of the cupola needs 2 rivets removed for proper attachment. And if you don't remove them, the armor part just doesn't fit. This is not mentioned anywhere. Why not? Again, a mystery. It is simple explanation needed here. Some of the more unpleasant issues for me followed next with the build. The machine gun offers extra flash and a mix of ultra-small plastic elements and photo etch parts with doubtful purpose. This whole myriad of pieces could have been molded into one single piece or 2 maximum. Wasting time cleaning flash and then losing time and energy again assembling the gun itself is something that I would advise against. Some of the parts are 1 to 2 millimeters in size. Pick a 3D printed part from somewhere and get it done. Saves time and energy better spent weathering the vehicle. Or, if you ask me, just leave the machine gun off. The StuG looks meaner that way anyhow. Then on, the build continues with the suspension. Interestingly, here we can find extra details, some of which remain completely invisible. This is a superb idea when you decide to make your kit damaged or abandoned, but also completely useless if you're building the kit as depicted on the box art. Many of the sub-assemblies are there just for the sake of being there as extra steps and extra parts. They do not bring anything extra to a complete and non-damaged normal StuG III though. If, on the other hand, you decide to dissect the vehicle, MiniArt is your only way to go that deep. Not everyone's a fan of a broken or damaged vehicle, but if you are, this is your best chance. Along those steps here, the tools are also to be attached on the sides of the StuG. There are options with only small PE parts of photo etch here and there, or clamps made solely from photo etch, which is tricky if you're not experienced. MiniArt's photo etch is extremely thin, probably the thinnest on the market, so you have to have this in mind. As you can see, my completed kit shows a lot of blink blink. In the same time, I would bet against that. The controversial thing here is that the kit out of the box is nearly perfect. It gives you everything you can hope for. Detail-wise, it gives you even more. MiniArt engineers are definitely beasts. But I saw perfectly fine Edward Brassin 3D printed tools which will do the same job and take fraction of the time that I spent bending photo etch, some of which is bent quite lame, and that is not because I am absolute amateur, but because MiniArt's photo etch is extremely thin. And of course I was impatient to complete it, but it was not all on me here. It is important to add that surprisingly for me and interestingly enough, on my reference pictures, it looks that scaled down the real metal clamps will look even thicker than what MiniArt gave us here in 35th scale. It is not bad, just the contrary, it's rather impressive, but it's way too thin here and there, and it looks weird. Also, it's just not my game. All the tools, and that is only if you ask me, should be 3D printed parts or empty 3D printed clamps. I believe those are Type 1 Panzer III and Panzer IV clamps if you're interested. Wheels, idlers and sprockets looks great. The only thing I added is a tin foil around the rods to make wheels stay on them because they kept falling off. The rods are too thin and the wheels are loose, but very nicely aligned without any effort on my behalf. I needed to thicken them somehow for the purpose of showing it for you as you can see it here. Return rollers are all metal, which is correct, and the reason for them being such, as with many other changes you see on late StuGs, is mostly the lack of raw materials that Germans experienced at the end of the war. Many people think this way is better. That's why Germans did it. It isn't. They did it because they were in need. The return rollers cause much more friction and wear, but they couldn't get the supplies to keep production going as it should be, hence the result here. Back to the StuG. The top of the superstructure I left unglued for painting purposes. There is a slight gap where the top meets the four walls of the superstructure, which I will fix once I am done with everything else. It can be glued all together, but it will limit the paint process of the area behind the gun mantlet. The hatches I wanted to install and glue on, but that is the point where the gap is worst. Now, before you judge me or MiniArt's fit, you should know that Panzermeister 36 show off his tack on Blitz and says that in 4 parts they fitted 40 or something parts that Dragon broke down in their StuG kits. Now let's do a similar comparison here. Right-field model, which is not as simplistic as the COM, offers 1/4 of the parts of the superstructure that MiniArt broke down here. 1/4. MiniArt does that best, of course. I am not saying like I like it, I present it to you as it is. They love to break down their kits to the smallest detail possible and make our life living hell. Some modelers like it like that though. The fender's attachment is something that went almost perfectly with the fit and alignment, which was a great surprise to me, especially for such a complex kit. Surprisingly, with everything that MiniArt somehow managed to cram inside this small thing, and with all those insane sub-assemblies, it seems like they did a super job with the fit of the plastic. There are gaps, but they are minor, and half of them are probably me rushing through the kit. That again doesn't make it perfect. The fit is there, but the simplicity is missing. Tools are something that gave me some headaches, because the jack handle is described in one direction in the jack assembly step and in another when attaching it to the fender. It is a mistake in the instructions which ultimately led to more troubles. The jack goes in the overcrowded area where the axe and the starter handle are, where you can barely fit anything. With the mistaken position of the handle, this hides some of the photo etch elements that you wasted your time and eyes on, and that beats the purpose. I think this is a bit of over-engineering here. Again, the solutions from my point of view are 3D printed tools and 3D printed open clamps. The triangle part that attaches the fender to the side panel is something that you should put first, not last as described on paper. The reasons are the same. It will save you some time and possible further fit issues or space issues. There are also issues with the accuracy, for example, the fire extinguisher and the C-hooks. Fire extinguisher should be a single strap one, and it is as wrong as in right-field model kit that Panzermeister 36 reviewed. It is not a major mistake, and nobody knows were there any StuGs Aus G with double strap extinguisher, but still. However, here the C-hooks show straps that seem the incorrect one for Alkett StuG from late production series. I trust that they should feature clamps just like those on the tools with additional handle which is missing here. Generally, those are minor things. So I just mentioned them to share with you what I researched. In the end, the travel lock exceeded my patience for minor misses, and I added something extra, being the spring that you can see here. I just couldn't help it. MiniArt offered only an attachment plate attached to a photo etch chain, which is not realistic enough. There is a spring, and I figured out a way to scratch build one and add it using electronic caliper to fit the proper size and whatever I had at home that fitted the description of the spring. Thus far, everything seemed very good, but then on the final two steps that I took, the disaster finally came to life. Assembled correctly as per in the instruction sheet, the stowage cage is completely misaligned. How come MiniArt made such a colossal mistake is beyond me. However, after some consideration, I found a solution, and that was to cut. I cut the already glued photo etch cage on the model, which was awfully risky, and re-glued it again like it was welded in real life. I did a mistake here gluing the rails on the other side of the correct position, but I can live with that, while I couldn't with what MiniArt offered originally. Such an error is absolutely unacceptable, but that luckily is the sole major mistake of the kit, and now that I know about it, you're advised and avoidance is possible for you as well. Now a few words about the tracks. You don't see assembled tracks because I haven't done mine, well, not more than 10 links thus far. These, according to my knowledge, are type 5B and as far as I know are accurate. They are molded nicely and they fit nicely too. I'm not an expert, I would bet that those should be taken as the correct ones. If you want to be sure, just ask Adam Man or Panzermeister 36. Adam have a wonderful video on tracks, and Panzermeister is the StuG expert, so they should be able to answer your questions on the tracks. However, those tracks here are the best alternative to metal or 3D printed tracks, and I think they're perfectly in tune with the rest of the kit. Plus the fact that they come out of the box, which is wonderful. So, what I think about this StuG. I think MiniArt are generally way too much out there. Ayahuasca, Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix style. This is far from Tamiya or Tacom. It is esoteric model in any possible way. It is its beauty and its curse in the same time. At times the assembly was annoying for me. Tools, machine gun and such small stuff I prefer to stay away from. Also the flash. But the flash is not way too much. It is, let's say, on 10% of the parts, which for such a detailed kit is something one can live with. Photo etch is too thin for some elements, and that is why my shirts in here are not installed. They need additional second plate, which are not here. So aftermarket is recommended, although not necessary. About the shirts in, you can take a look again at the Panzermeister 36 rifle model Ultimate StuG video. He explained very thoroughly how it should be done. Here in general, photo etch can be a tad more thick to make it easier to work with and probably will do it a bit more fun. Kit accuracy is surprisingly good, and that adds to the fact that you have everything in one box to keep you occupied for a couple of weeks throughout such build. I think that some of the parts are perfectly scaled down from the real thing, which is great. The bad news is that sometimes to be attractive, kit needs to be in areas exaggerated, which MiniArt missed. They made a brilliant StuG, but they scaled it down too literally, if you know what I mean. Well, lines, textures, photo etch parts, and some others, all that can be buffed up a little bit to make the kit more attractive. Everything is too much in scale. Just perfect, but perfection is not always good. However, expert modelers will most likely consider this as the best StuG on the market, making Tacom and Tamiya look like toys for kids. Definitely some of the elements look better than those on Ryefield model for me. And with little effort and some aftermarket, this could be the king. The truth, however, is not exactly like that, but it is rather that we need to seek the golden middle. In other words, if you want to build only MiniArt Panzer IVs and StuG IIIs, well, I personally would stop at the second or third kit build. There is too much of a hassle here and there. It's a struggle. I was relieved when I finished the last step of the kit. But if you want to make one MiniArt kit for every 3 or 4 Meng, Tacom, Ryefield or Tamiya, well, this StuG here is a must. It challenges you, it opens your eyes to different perspectives, and it is worth experiencing MiniArt's point of view and approach to modeling. They did a great job, although limiting their audience to the experienced pro modelers with elevated skill level. Nevertheless, brilliant StuG III from Alkett. Not the easiest build out there, but definitely one of the most attractive kits once you finish it. Thank you for watching. I hope you find that useful. I will see you in the next one.